Welcome to Free and Accepted Podcasting, Suffolk Freemasons podcast designed to inform, entertain and educate. Welcome to another episode of Suffolk Freemasons Free and Accepted podcast. Today, myself and my co-host Roger. Good afternoon, Roger.
Good afternoon, Mark. How are you?
Very, very well. We have two esteemed guests in the Deputy Provincial Grand Master.
Good afternoon.
And you are Roger?
I'm Roger Nash.
Roger Nash. And the Deputy Superintendent.
And I'm Tim McCormick.
Tim McCormick. Now, we have to say, this is probably the best place we've interviewed anybody so far. This is in Roger's summer house. It's a Canadian redwood.
It is Canadian redwood, yes.
It looks absolutely stunning. We may have another guest appear every now and then, which is Teddy, the terrifying terrier.
Yes.
So we are outside in this beautiful location in Bacton. So please enjoy the background noises if you hear them. So, gentlemen, thank you for taking part in this one of a series of podcasts. Roger, perhaps start with you and your role and responsibilities that go with it.
Well, I was fortunate to be appointed Deputy Provincial Grand Master in May last year, so I've done just over a year in the office. Role-wise, I've spent the last 12 months getting around the province. I've been very fortunate, and I've had a number of offices in both the Royal Arch and the Craft over the years, which have taken me round the province. And going round again as Deputy Provincial Grand Master gives me the opportunity to meet a lot of old friends once again, which is always very enjoyable. And I'm happy to say that so far, at least, I've been welcomed wherever I've been.
But being the past Provincial Secretary, that must have helped going into the role of as Deputy.
Yes, it did.
Because an understanding.
The Provincial Secretary is a key role because you're involved in everything that goes on in the province to some degree. So, I've got a fairly good knowledge of Suffolk Masonry. And of course, I've been a provincial DC in both the Royal Arch and the Craft, and I did 4 years as second principal in the Royal Arch as well. So I've been around the province a fair bit. I've been to every lodge. I've been to every chapter at least once, some of them numerous times. So, there's a lot of familiar faces in them. It's always nice to meet old friends again.
And prior to that, you were Provincial Senior Warden?
I was Provincial Senior Warden in 2016, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that's a good backing for coming up to the Deputy Provincial Grand Master.
Well, it all helps to in the training for the job. Yes, it does. Yeah.
But it must have been a great honour for you to become Deputy Provincial Grand Master. But there was one special person who was attending that meeting to put on your chain.
Yes, there was. Yeah, I mean, my dad was there. Dad's 99 now. He was 98 then. He was my proposer into Masonry, and I said to him, is there any chance you could be at the Provincial Grand Lodge meeting when I'm invested as Deputy PGM? And he said, try and stop me getting there. But he's not very mobile these days, so we had to pour him into a wheelchair. But having done that, when he arrived, I said, there's a little job I'd like you to do for me. He said, I've got to say anything, have I? And I said, no, you haven't. But I said, you have got to carry my chain if you would. So Brian Wilkes was very kind in that he said that he would push my dad in his wheelchair. So when I processed into Provincial Grand Lodge, my dad was right behind me in his wheelchair with my chain on his lap.
Oh, wonderful.
That was lovely. I remember that. It was really lovely. Yeah. Now, Tim, follow that.
Well, I've had a distinguished career in the provincial choir.
Yes, we'll come on to that. But you, Deputy...
Well, I was Deputy Provincial Grand Master before Roger, so Roger followed me. And I'd also been Senior Grand Warden in the province, and that was a terrific role. Both those jobs were wonderful. I mean, it gave me the chance to get round, and like Roger, get to every lodge virtually, and every building, and get to know Suffolk as well, and all the people in Suffolk. And then I was delighted. It was time to move on, and then the past Provincial Grand Master and at the time Grand Superintendent offered me the role of Deputy Grand Superintendent, and I couldn't believe my luck. It was a wonderful opportunity to keep very much involved, and of course, chapter now so closely linked to Craft, and it gave me the opportunity to carry on what I've been doing before in a gentle way, because chapter's much gentler than Craft, still as wonderful. And and very much same as Roger. Getting around, meeting everyone. It's the beauty of the job, and it is a great honour to be doing the job.
It is.
Because what's very noticeable about you two and a lot of the officers nowadays and the executive is you are both very approachable. And I think that really helps. There's no criticism of anybody in the past or whatever, but but it does help, doesn't it? I think that you go to a lodge and you know people are going to be welcoming.
Yes, yeah, it makes you feel very welcome when you turn up some of the lodges. And as I said, you see a lot of old faces and names that you've known from the past, people who have been supporting the province in different ranks and different offices throughout my Masonic career, which is almost 30 years now. And yeah, it's nice to be able to talk to them on a one-to-one basis.
Yeah, until you go round, you don't realise what a wonderful province we do have, and the brethren that are in there.
And how varied it is.
Yes,
it's very much. Chapter in particular, I think there's more ceremonies than there are chapters out there. But it's wonderful. And every part of Suffolk is different. I mean, Bury is not the same as Lowestoft or Felixstowe. They're completely different centres, and they've got all different strengths and weaknesses, and it's lovely to appreciate that.
And it's lovely to go to Woodbridge, isn't it? Because when you go to Woodbridge, I mean, that is just a little temple on its own, really, isn't it?
Well, my background is building. I'm a surveyor, and I love the buildings. I mean, I have to say, getting into a Masonic building and seeing how they cope with the difficulty sometimes the building throws at them is terrific. And some, as you know, are relatively small temples, often above shops or what have you, and they vary considerably.
Yeah, a lot of them need quite a lot of money spent on them nowadays.
Well, that's perhaps something that's we've got to look into and be ready to support where we can.
Yeah.
And that is something that the province is doing, because historically Superintendent of Works was just a name for an office, whereas now, of course, the current Superintendent of Works, Barry Wymark, has been very much involved in looking at some of the Masonic centres, and we have now formally set up the Masonic Building Fund.
Oh, that's good.
Which the Provincial Treasurer has been involved with as well, so that if any of the Masonic centres are looking for some sort of funding to assist them in maintaining the buildings or whatever, then we have a system that we can do that, which has never existed before.
And is that a loan, or is that a given? Or?
No, it's a loan, but it's on advantageous terms, shall we say.
Okay.
So
because I know, like Southwold, their wall was falling down, which has now been repaired. And they've still got other ongoing problems.
They have, but Southwold were very wise in that they had some insurance for subsidence, and they've claimed on that insurance. But equally, Province has helped them out as well. So we've enabled them to complete the works that they wanted to do. So that's worked out very well. And Bury St Edmunds, likewise, we've helped them with a small project just recently. So
well, some of the guys who will be listening to this, obviously you became Deputy Provincial Grand Master, but for a period there you were Deputy Provincial Grand Master in charge.
I was.
And would you be able to explain that to the audience? Because some people might not understand what Deputy in Charge means.
Well, it basically means you're in charge, because the province at that time didn't have a Provincial Grand Master, because Ian Yeldon retired officially at the end of September, early October, and our new Provincial Grand Master wasn't installed until early November. So there was an interregnum there of about a month, and it says on my patent that if the Provincial Grand Master is not available for any reason, then running the province falls to me. So I think the province was very lucky that I didn't make any major changes.
That would have undoubtedly been an honour, but was it daunting to think, blimey, I'm in charge of this?
Yes, it was quite daunting, because everything fell at my door if there was a problem. So I made jolly sure there wasn't.
Use the officers very much.
Now,
I can genuinely say that I was Provincial Grand Master in all but name for a month.
Yeah,
I had the same honour for a month as in chapter.
Yeah,
same held true in that.
Oh yes, that's right. Yes, I didn't realise that as well.
Did it fall apart for you, or were you okay?
To be honest, I know there were some doubters, but we held it together, I think.
I have no doubt at all, no. And you've both touched on that, and one of the things we want to look at is, we know that Craft and Royal Arch want to blend more together. So what's the vision, Tim, from your side particularly?
Well, I think a lot of it comes from our new PGM Grand Superintendent, who's very, very keen for us to be drawn closer together. Structures are being established that help ensure that happens. some roles are now joint roles. But actually, we've got to do this on the ground. We've got to win hearts and minds, and people have got to want to do it. But I think every companion is also a brother, aren't they? So it shouldn't be a difficult sell, but there are great advantages from chapter's point of view, not least because hopefully more people get to know and understand who we are and what we are. Our profile has never been higher. I think the chapter profile in craft has never been higher. And I think that's wonderful, and long may it continue, because I think more and more younger brethren who aren't in chapter and know little about it begin to see people who've got roles to play in chapter. They're talked about more. They see me more, obviously, and they see the second and third grade principals, Roger and Nigel, they're more conspicuous. They want to know about it, and hopefully that means they're more likely to join. I mean, that is a fairly simple target, is to get the number of brethren up, the percentage up, and I think we can achieve that. And one of the incentives to do that, obviously, is that if we can tip our numbers over 1,000, which is doable, then we get extra officers each year. We get extra provincial officers each year.
Do you know roughly the number, that there is at the moment?
We're in about the mid-900s.
Right, so it's fairly healthy.
Get 1,000. So we want to get 50. But there are probably a couple of hundred brethren who are companions but aren't attached at the moment, who might join if approached. So that's something to think about.
And the initiative behind that is introducing these red tablecloth events.
So there's red table events. I tell you what, hopefully will be the best initiative is that our visiting officers moving forward will also cover chapters as well as craft lodges.
That is the next step with the VOs now, that they are looking after both.
And that should work really well, because here's an example. I went to a chapter meeting, and there, as some of the junior newer chapter officers, were two guys from Colford Lodge, that's my mother lodge, and I hadn't known they'd joined. Now, it's because no one had advertised it, no one had mentioned it at any meetings. And that was a simple thing. I'd have definitely gone to see them come in, but I just missed it. I just didn't spot that they were joining. Now we've got VOs who are going to go to chapter meetings and craft meetings. They can make announcements, make sure everyone knows who's getting exalted. So hopefully we'll get more attendance, because it's not just members, it's people visiting.
Do you think that'd be a good idea coming from the craft lodges? So in the risings, like the secretary will stand up and say, John Smith will be joining Cofford chapter. Any chapter member would like to go, because people don't know that they're joining, and people do like to go to their exaltees meeting to welcome them into chapter.
Well, sure.
As you say, people don't know. So.
Because there isn't a Cofford chapter at the moment.
You
can help me start that one up if you want. But I agree entirely. If we can achieve that, it's a very simple thing. They call it low-hanging fruit, really. It's a very obvious, simple thing. And I'm sure many people would go to see someone they knew being exalted. I'm sure they would be.
Because Grand Lodge have helped and Grand Chapter have helped, because from the 1st of January there'll no longer be a joining fee for the Royal Arch.
Oh, right.
So when you join the craft, that will include you. You will automatically be entitled to join the Royal Arch as well with no additional cost.
But I say that we're also here today that Roger has provided chocolate hobnobs.
Yeah, we can hear that.
Yes.
That's why I've let Roger do a lot of the talking. We've got a cup of tea.
It's Mark's chomping away.
So the next meeting we do, whoever that is, they need to at least have donuts. So we're not coming.
Obviously, Tim, you're in the Masonic choir.
I am. Yeah.
I mean, Roger's got a good voice, but obviously
Roger been in the Masonic choir.
plays the drums as well, so we could get a band going.
We could do,
He's the craft and chapter band.
Mark could be on the deck.
Yeah.
I've got it.
We do. So Roger and I, for many years, sang in the choir.
We did.
And really, until we suddenly got elevated, we were at every provincial meeting in that choir.
We were.
Having a great time.
We sang with the choir for a lot of years, but once I was made provincial secretary, it was difficult to suddenly dash across the room to join the choir and dash back again. And when I was made senior warden, it was even more difficult.
But I had to stand down as senior warden. Got 1 year, and then I got made deputy PGM. So couldn't come in. But we have. I did manage to slip in this year. On the way out, I managed to do the closing song.
That's okay.
We are very fortunate having Graham Colthorpe behind us to do that, because he does a sterling job. Of course, one of the things that Tim and I have both done in our as Deputy PGM as you get round the other provinces. And there are very few provinces around the country that have a choir anywhere near like ours, if a choir at all. I think East Kent have one, and that's about the only one that I can think of.
Yeah, no, Essex have the trumpeters, don't they? Yeah?
They do, yeah.
But that's not the same.
That's not quite the same, no.
Can I just come back? We're going to explore your the personal side of you both very shortly, but your vision, Roger, for craft, I know that'll be in conjunction with the PGM, but are there any strong views you have about how you see it progressing, retention, recruitment, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, retention is an important one because we all tend to think about the fact that we'd like to introduce new people into the craft all the time. And so far this year, Suffolk is performing extremely well. We've got a net growth of almost 50 this year to date. So our numbers are increasing all the time. But of course, what we tend to forget about is that we don't want to lose people off the other end. Unfortunately, the great architect will take some of our number from time to time, and that, I'm afraid, is outside of our control. But what we do need to do is make sure that the members that we've already got continue to enjoy their masonry and therefore attend their lodge meetings. And that there's lots of different ways of doing that by changing the styles of meetings. And I know there's been a lot said about change of the time the meeting starts and the festive board and that sort of thing. But fundamentally, I think we've just got to make them enjoyable. And that might mean theme evenings. And I've been to lodge meetings where they had a theme based on Trafalgar Night or Burns Night or some other period of history. And they all helps to change the atmosphere and make it more interesting. It's not just the same festive board every month.
Well, we spoke to Larry Ben Susan, didn't we?
Yes.
And in the that podcast, and what he was saying is there's so much effort put on getting the ritual right that sometimes you lose the meaning of the ceremony, or everything is focused on have I delivered good ritual. Now, it's not to say we don't want good ritual. There's nobody more prouder than any of us if we deliver good ritual. But I think sometimes we lose what we're in masonry for.
And I think Larry's quite right. And that when the office of provincial orator was first set up, and the first provincial orator in Suffolk was Trevor White. That was his role. And Trevor, I went out with Trevor the first 3 or 4 times that he went out and spoke. And Trevor's style was not to deliver a lecture, but to ask questions. And it was quite interesting. Sometimes he would pitch a question, and he had 2 people from opposite sides of the temple would have completely different understandings of the answer to that question. So yeah, there's a lot to learn about masonry. And do it in a more sometimes a more relaxed, enjoyable way than worrying about whether you're going to get a word wrong. And thankfully, the tut corner seems to be dissipating a little.
That'll be us soon, don't worry.
Right,
Give us another 10 years.
But Tim, when you came out of the senior warden's role, you got quite heavily involved in the mentoring role. Keith Huxley,
I did. Well, and you and I did.
I was there as well. Yes.
I remember we went to Norfolk once.
Yeah.
That was a difficult trip.
That was very difficult, very hard work.
I got involved in the early stages of the mentoring and the early iterations of Pathway, and I think they now sort of 10 years on from when we first started looking at Pathway and changes. We've come on leaps and bounds.
Very much so.
The iterations have improved on a yearly basis. Each new release has been fine-tuned and is very accessible. There's some great resources out there to support the lodges and the chapters. Because in chapter we have Archway now, which was released last year. And that's another great resource. All of them, though, provide the opportunity to reflect on what you're doing. I mean, fundamentally, Pathway and Archway is about taking a step back with your companions or with your brethren, your lodge or chapter, and saying, what are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? How can we do it better? And so if you view Pathway and Archway and all the other resources as your opportunity to do that, it may well be you think, actually, our ceremonies aren't very good. Let's make them better. Or we're too heavily focused on the ceremony and we're having a pretty miserable time. Let's rein it back a bit and enjoy the meeting more, or whatever it might happen to be. There's always an answer in there if you reflect on what you're doing. And that's what hopefully they invite you to do. And that's what mentoring was about in those very early stages. We got it right and wrong to start with, but now it's very much about take a step back, ask yourself what you're doing, sit around with your companions, your brother, and ask how we're doing it, what we could do right or wrong, and hopefully you find the answer.
Because some of the companions might say that they enjoy chapter because you don't have to learn it verbatim. But I think, is there an encouragement to perhaps learn that ritual verbatim as well, as opposed to just reading from the book?
There's a balance. There's always a balance. I think if everyone is reading from the book, you aren't going to get very many visitors. In the end, people are going to think, well, we could all read. So it is quite important to try and present as much as you can. But there is no reason why you have to do all of it. I mean, that's the key thing. Chapter in particular, there's a lot of work to do, and a lot of people join and could probably comfortably handle a few paragraphs and be quite pleased to have something to do in the ceremony. Also, if you don't get involved, you can maybe get confused about what's going on. Once you've read it all and you're learning your bit, that adds context and you know what's happening and why you're there. So I think it's quite important to try and encourage people to do the best they can. And that's really about trying to not use the book where you can, but be understanding if people struggle, because everyone can only do what they can do. And as long as people try their best, we're all very appreciative of that.
Because nobody goes out on a Masonic evening to mess up the ceremony or anything like that.
No,
they will try their best.
Yeah.
But the good thing about chapter is a lot of it's been split up now, hasn't it? So
it does lend itself to being split up very nicely.
It used to be a two-man job, didn't it? And I think that's what drew people away at one point, because there was no involvement like craft. You're heavily involved in your progression.
Absolutely, in my own chapter, if we deliver the full exaltation ceremony and one or two of the lectures, splits up quite nicely. You can involve as many as a dozen or 15 different people in the evening. And as Tim quite rightly says, if you get a dozen or 15 people doing a small part each, it's not too onerous for anybody. And I always think a change of tone and a change of voice from time to time keeps things going.
One in Colney's, I can't remember, I think it was the third, but it may have actually been something, may have been the charge, but they delivered it, 3 of them, and they delivered, and it wasn't in sections. They rotate round a sentence. So you have to know
it all.
You have to know it all. Well, know when your time, and it was, and I think the candidate really appreciated it.
Well, that's a very. I've seen a triple done in Cambridgeshire, where the 3 sovereigns did a third each, but they didn't do it that way. They took a chunk each, and there's fairly obvious moments where you can change.
But I thought, they're going to do, as you say, chunks, and then. Next thing, but that really changed it around, and I thought it was.
Roger and I both went to London to watch the Savage Ritual, which is a sort of an abridged ritual, really, and we quite liked.
I quite enjoyed
the concept of it all.
Yeah, because you don't lose any of the meaning of the ceremony. But it is just a little bit more compact.
I mean, to simplify it, the main body of the chapter meeting. When generally in most chapters people are going in and out of the room a few times and changing what they're wearing, that's cut out. All the action takes place in the temple, and on this occasion the principal sergeant acted effectively as a narrator, and everything was played out before us all while he narrated what went on. And I think that worked really well. It was a very engaging ceremony. So
we have talked about one of the chapters in the province adopting that ritual just to show something to people, something a little bit different.
Have we just had the ceremony of the veils, or is that coming up?
Yes. Installed first principles.
Yes, that's right.
Did a demonstration of that. No, I went along to that. And that was.
I go along. I've never been in it.
Oh, right.
But I did actually read on that.
Do you think we, in a way, not lose our tradition? Because I think we're all traditionalists here. But are there things we could possibly do for lodges that people would go, well, I get put off because we're so rigid in our format? But there's that real balance, isn't there, between changing too much but making them more appealing to the perhaps younger people who come in.
I'd rather use the word improve rather than change.
Improve.
Yeah. Because I think we can adapt all the ceremonies without losing any of their meaning. And because the ceremonies are what makes Freemasonry different to any other membership organisation. You know, we don't have guest speakers come in every month like people from outside of Masonry think we might do, like Rotary or Round Table does, or the WI. You know, our ceremonies of explaining to the candidates what Freemasonry is about is the basis of the whole organisation, as it makes us different to everybody else.
Yeah. Now, you touched on earlier, Roger Coulson, of course, Roger Nash. You're a drummer.
I have been
a man of my own heart. But just tell us a little bit about your drumming experiences. How long and who do you play with? And
well, I now play in a local band. I played the drums from about the ages of 14 to 19 until I went to uni, and then I got out of the habit, and then you get involved in young farmers and ladies and marriages and children and houses, and something had to give, and I didn't pick a pair of drumsticks up for nearly 35 years. And then my eldest daughter, who plays the piano, decided she wanted to learn the drums, so we bought a practice kit. That didn't last long because she was fed up with the fact that her dad could play the drums better than she could, and the kit went in the loft. And then a long-time friend of mine, I mean long-time, from primary school, I've known him well over 60 years, he plays the guitar reasonably proficiently, and said, why don't we get together one night and play together? So we have. So for the last, 8-9 years, I went out and bought myself a nice drum kit, the one that I couldn't afford when I was 14, badly wanted, but and I've played ever since. But I play purely for the pleasure of it, and there's 5 of us get together, you know, once every 2, 3, 4 weeks, and we just thrash through a lot of rock and roll from the 60s, 70s, 80s. Anything that we like. Is usually high tempo stuff. We don't do ballads. Right. And we both rehearsed at the Magpie in Stowmarket. We did. When I was about 17, 18, I used to frequent the Magpie in Stowmarket, and yeah, that was fun. Now, Tim, you are a thespian.
I haven't been on stage for a while, though.
Have you not? Are you directing now?
I used to direct a youth theatre, but to be honest, I stepped back when I got very busy with Masonry, and also when I was clearly so much older than everyone else. You
have to be conscious of that, don't you?
Well, actually, I enjoyed it and still enjoy it because you get to keep in touch with what's happening with the younger kids. So that's quite nice, really. Well, I sing a lot. I do sing a lot still.
Where do you?
Well, at the moment, I'm singing in a choir just the other side of Berry, Great Barton. And it's mostly fairly modern stuff with a twist. And I am comfortably the oldest in that group.
So there's a theme appearing here, Jim.
But basically, other people realise that they should retire and I don't. So people look at me a bit strange and think, what's he doing with that lot? But I do enjoy singing.
So do we want to watch Britain's Got Talent the next time coming round?
But Ask Singer.
Yes. But I think it's nice to be able to keep doing things, isn't it?
Oh, I love the
fact that you start to get a bit old and think, I can't do it.
Yeah, well, with certain things, you can keep doing it, can't you? Things that you generally can keep going. I mean, if I were a weightlifter or something, or a long-distance runner, it would be different, wouldn't it? So you're lucky with your sport. It's a bit like Roger and the drums. When you get middle-aged, you pick up a hobby, don't you?
Oh, yes.
You know, some of the boys out there listening have bought themselves big, expensive, powerful motorbikes.
Yes.
And that's something I couldn't do. I wouldn't know which way round to sit on it, let alone buy it. And we all like a hobby to keep us young.
That's why I bought the convertible. That's an old man's motorbike.
It is, I saw it.
Because it's safe.
I saw it.
Four-wheel.
I hit it, I saw it. It'll knock out.
Yeah.
My dad always says never give anything up, because if you give it up, you might not start it again.
Exactly.
Oh, that's a good one.
And Bruce Springstone's been playing around. He played Europe, didn't he, and England. Yeah. And the A Street Band is still going. And I mean, they're probably in their 70s at least, aren't they?
And our own Rick Wakeman, of course.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, I mean, Rick still plays. He doesn't live very far away from him, but he was playing at the Apex in Bury St Edmunds a little while ago, and he can still play the piano reasonably well.
Yeah. What amazes me though with these bands, like Bruce Springsteen, he goes on the stage and he does 3 hours plus.
It's amazing, isn't it? That?
And then you go to a local dinner dance and you get a band and they play for 20 minutes and then they have a break. What is that? What
That's
is,
usually
I can never
because-
get my head
I'll tell you the answer to that is we only ever know about 5 songs.
Oh, right.
So you hope people have had a few drinks and forgotten to do the same set.
Yeah.
I did that at a wedding once.
Well, we're the other way round. If we thrash through everything, I think we play about 80 or 90 different tracks.
Oh, right.
That's a lot to
So if we went from beginning to end, you'd soon get fed up. Because
muscle memory comes into force. Gentlemen, I cannot believe that we are nearly at the end of our 30 minutes. Can I thank you on behalf of myself and Roger? Thank you for taking the time to speak to
It's
us.
been a pleasure.
my pleasure. Yeah, thoroughly enjoyed it.
And if
I'd like
there's
to thank Roger for the biscuits
the biscuits,
Yes, thank you.
the setting,
and the venue.
Yeah.
the setting is. I don't think we can
Don't
do
know if we're
this.
going to go home, are we?
No, here we are.
I'd better start the barbecue.
So, gentlemen, thank you very much, and we look forward to perhaps speaking to you again within the year or so.
Yep, be pleased to talk to you again, Mark.
Thanks a lot, Mark.
Thank you.
Cheerio, Roger.
And Roger.
Andrew.
Thank you again for joining me on Suffolk Province's free and accepted podcasting as we explore the craft and royal arch. Please join me and my guests for more episodes.